Our new connector is called Lightning. So now we have Thunderbolt and Lightning in our connector strategy. This connector is a modern connector for the next decade.
For the past 10 years, Apple's Lightning connector has been the main solution for charging and transferring data on the iPhone. But now, it's clearly the #1 weakness in terms of iPhone hardware. And for the past week, I've been doing a bunch of research, and I think I've finally come to the conclusion that there's a good chance that Apple's upcoming iPhone 14 Pro will come with a USB-C port. So in this video, I'm gonna provide you with some solid proof for my prediction based on leaks and rumors, as well as what Apple has done in the past and what they're currently doing right now, which is giving us some major hints at why the time is right for USB-C. So let's get right into it. Back in September, Mark Gurman claimed that the iPhone 14 would feature a complete redesign, and I talked a lot about that in my recent video where I had some custom renders made for me by Shailesh on Twitter. And even earlier, back in August, Mark Gurman wrote a very interesting article from Bloomberg titled, "It's Time for Apple to Fix Its Confusing Device Charger Strategy." And within the article, he mentioned that Lightning has served Apple well since 2012, but USB-C has become the default, and the pros of moving to USB-C are stronger than the cons. By moving the iPhone to USB-C, Apple will have a unified connector with its Macs and countless other devices. And keep in mind that those words come from the most reliable Apple leaker out there with an 87% accuracy rating covering over 500 rumors. But adding on to that, we also saw a similar leak from Leaks Apple Pro claiming that USB-C might finally be coming to the iPhone 14 Pro. And according to his sources, there are 3 reasons for why Apple could be switching to USB-C: transfer speeds, legal troubles, and the environment/cost. As we all know, transfer speeds with USB-C are much faster than Lightning, which is limited to USB 2.0 speeds. And as far as legal troubles, both the Biden-Harris administration and the European Union are pushing for USB-C ports on all devices. And in terms of the environment, Apple could switch to USB-C while at the same time removing the cable from the box to help save the environment and obviously save Apple cash. So with that said, we already have leaks pointing to Apple switching to USB-C on the iPhone 14 Pro, but I've got even better evidence for why this makes so much sense. But first, we've got to take a look at all the 3 major reasons for why Apple gave the USB-C port to the iPad Pro back in 2018. Before that point, people were complaining about the Lightning port for years, saying that it was single-handedly holding the iPad Pro back from being a true Pro device. And as for the second reason, USB-C was required for some of the features that Apple was planning to give the iPad Pro, like connecting fast external SSDs to help with professional editing, as well as connecting to external monitors, which is a feature that is not supported by Lightning. And Apple even showed off the USB-C port being used for various things like connecting digital cameras for easy file transfers, charging an iPhone, connecting to an audio mixer, and once again, to a display. And the third and final reason for adding USB-C was that Apple knew that they wanted to up the base price of the iPad Pro up to $799. And there's no way that they could have gotten away with it without adding USB-C to solve all of those limitations and complaints. And if you really think about it, every time Apple added USB-C to an iPad, it came with a price increase, like the iPad Air 4 in 2020, which got $100 more expensive, as well as the iPad Mini 6 last year, also $100 more. And part of that price increase was to help compensate for lost revenues from Apple's Lightning port, because if you didn't already know, Apple makes royalty fees from every accessory out there that uses a Lightning port through their MFI program. So with that said, before I explain why it makes so much sense for Apple to switch to USB-C on the iPhone 14 Pro models, let me break down how I think Apple plans to make this USB-C switch happen. To start, I believe that Apple is planning on raising the base price of the iPhone 14 Pro models because I don't know if you remember or not, but before Apple revealed the iPhone 13, 14 lineup, it was rumored that they would raise iPhone prices because their main chip supplier, TSMC, increased the pricing on their silicon chip wafers. And since we didn't get an iPhone price increase last year, I believe that it's coming this year, specifically with the iPhone 14 Pro models getting $100 more expensive. However, the problem is that Apple needs to justify the price increase, and the way that they've always done this is with a full redesign, which for the upcoming iPhone 14 has been rumored for months now, including the new pill-shaped cutout to replace the notch on only the Pro models, as you can see in this render that I had created by Shailesh. So with that said, many people will gladly pay an extra $100 for that new hole punch display design that looks very fresh. But on the other hand, there are some people who could care less about the notch since they've gotten used to it over the past couple of years, and to them, spending the extra cash isn't worth it. So Apple would need something else to entice people into accepting the base price increase, and I fully believe that it could be the switch to USB-C. Because if you think about it, people have been asking for USB-C for years now, and Apple has been holding off for so long that if Apple made the switch right now, then the majority of consumers would be totally shocked and blown away by this move by Apple. And by doing this, it could single-handedly get people who previously hated on Apple for years to finally soften up a bit and even consider switching from an Android to the iPhone. And that's not even mentioning the millions of people with older iPhones who will finally have a great reason to upgrade to the 14 Pro just because of that USB-C port that will make their life so much easier if they already have a bunch of other USB-C cables lying around. So even if switching to USB-C would mean lost revenue for Apple from their Lightning ecosystem, the vast number of new iPhone sales because of that new USB-C port would more than make up for the lost revenue. And if you don't know what I mean by lost revenue, Apple's Lightning port is part of the MFI program, which means that every time any company out there creates an accessory like a Lightning cable or adapter, Apple charges a licensing royalty for that Lightning connector, bringing in a bunch of extra revenue. And that right there is probably why Apple has stuck to Lightning for so long, because if they suddenly ditched it, they would lose out on all of that MFI royalty revenue within a couple of years. But thankfully, Apple has been working on the absolute perfect solution to this problem, which will make it much easier to ditch Lightning. And that is, of course, Apple's new MagSafe ecosystem for the iPhone. If you didn't already know, both the MagSafe case module and the MagSafe charger module are also part of the MFI program, which means that Apple makes money for every single MagSafe accessory sold, regardless of whether it supports charging or not. So MagSafe is already replacing the MFI profits from Apple's Lightning connector. And in my opinion, it's gonna make much more money than Lightning since MagSafe is modern and it's many times more useful. In fact, we've already made 3 videos on useful MagSafe accessories, and my absolute favorite iPhone accessory I've ever purchased in my life is this MagSafe vent mount charger for my car, which is incredibly convenient. But having MagSafe in the MFI program is absolutely genius for Apple because it has nothing to do with the wired charging port since it's on the back of the iPhone. So Apple can easily switch to USB-C and still make a ton of revenue from MagSafe MFI royalty fees. So the point that I'm trying to make is that Apple isn't going to ditch Lightning until they successfully create an alternative ecosystem that will bring in extra MFI royalty revenue from their iPhone, and I fully believe that Apple has already achieved that goal with the new MagSafe ecosystem, and they're now finally ready to begin ditching the Lightning port. And making my point even more convincing, Apple has recently added MagSafe charging support to both their new AirPods 3 and AirPods Pro cases. And even better, the most reliable leaker out there, Mark Gurman, believes that Apple is adding wireless MagSafe support to the iPad Pro later this year to further push the MagSafe ecosystem forward. And to make it even crazier, Mark mentioned that Apple plans on giving the Apple Watch magnetic MagSafe charger support as well. So if all of this comes to light, it proves that Apple is going to be fully invested in making MagSafe the new MFI money maker to replace the old Lightning standard. But now, with all of that said, I have one last reason for Apple adding USB-C to the iPhone 14 Pro, and I think that this one is the final nail in the coffin. When Apple finally added USB-C to the iPad Pro, the main reason was that Lightning was severely limiting what the iPad could do, and I fully believe that we've finally reached that point with the iPhone's Lightning port. With the iPhone 13 Pro, you can now record ProRes video, which takes up a massive amount of storage space, specifically 6 gigabytes per minute for 4K ProRes. But the problem is that the Lightning port still only supports USB 2 speeds, meaning that transferring those ProRes files takes forever. For example, Michael Tobin on YouTube did a ProRes first look video, and he said that it took between 1 to 1.5 hours to transfer 160 gigs of 4K ProRes video, which translates to only around 26 minutes of footage. And because of that super slow Lightning port transfer speed, he said that it's probably gonna discourage users from recording in ProRes at all. But wait, it gets even worse because we've been recently getting some very solid leaks and rumors from analysts like Ming-Chi Kuo that point to the iPhone 14 Pro coming with a brand new 48 megapixel main camera that can shoot 8K video. Yes, I said 8K, and I believe it's gonna work using the same ProRes format since Apple is building ProRes encoders and decoders into both their iPhone and Mac chips to make shooting, editing, and playing back ProRes footage use much less power. And this finally brings me to a tweet from MKBHD on Twitter mentioning that 8K ProRes video would use 24 gigabytes of storage space per minute. So yes, the quality is gonna be insane, but if Apple sticks to the Lightning port on the iPhone 14 Pro, it'll literally take over an hour to transfer only around 6 minutes of 8K ProRes footage, which is completely unacceptable and unrealistic. And based on that final point, along with everything that I already mentioned in this video, including the leaks and rumors, I believe that there's a pretty good chance that we will finally see the USB-C port on the upcoming iPhone 14 Pro. And if you totally disagree with me, go ahead and comment your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed this video, click the circle above to subscribe for more videos like this one, and definitely check out one of those two right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.